Well, it's the beginning of 2020, at least by the lights of most people. There are some math nerds who are saying that actually we're at the end of the first decade, but whatever, I don't care. It's 2020, and guess what? We didn't do a wrap-up of 2019, and when I think about somebody who I want to talk to about all the stuff that happened the past year, is particularly in the world of pop culture and creativity and TV, music, movies, all that stuff, books, of course. I think of my buddy Jason McIntyre. He's the returning champion. He has probably been on the show just about more than anybody else, and he never disappoints. And we're so happy to have this fantastic author of the Dovetail Cove I was going to say mysteries. It's not a mystery. It's the Dovetail Cove series, among others. And so, Jason, welcome back to Mysterious Goings On.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Great to be back. Never disappoints, though. I don't know. You're kind of setting me up for a little bit of expectation. But thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for being back. And I'm sorry we couldn't get you on towards the end of the year. I think we both had just like life stuff pop up. And
Yeah. Well, December's always just nuts by its very nature. But yeah, I think there was probably extra stuff for both of us this year.
Yeah, I'll say so. And my listeners are going, Alex, please don't start talking about your stuff again. Do you want to know something, though? This is Jason. I got to tell you this. You can look at your downloads on episodes, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know that those 2 episodes I did last year, the one about potentially losing my sight, and then the other one about my bout with kidney stones, are I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, are number one. I think are number 1 and number 3 in downloads on my
Honestly,
show.
I'm not surprised. I mean, the way you told those stories, and I think you probably needed some distance from them both before you could record them. I'm just making that assumption. But the way that you actually, like your voice and the words you chose and the style, they're very powerful. They're funny in places. They're just really effective. So I'm not surprised at all that those are very high on the downloads list.
Well, thank you. It was really very kind of close to figuratively just turning on the mic and opening a vein a little bit, because I just had so much going on and I just had to let it all out. And I'm glad that people are listening to it. Now, some people might be listening to it and going, oh my God, this guy's such a drama king. But, I don't care. I mean, if it entertains people and also it helped me, I think it's a winner. So it's good. But, also one of my top downloads from last year, that was when we had you and our fellow writer, colleague, Eden Bailey on. We had three writers walk into a pod. We had 2 episodes.
Right. Yeah. You split that one in half, I think. That was so much fun to do. I think we should do it again with her.
I do too.
Yeah.
Do you think she will? She's pretty cool. I don't know.
I think she absolutely will. I think the only thing will be just scheduling. I think she'll jump at it because, we're pretty likable guys.
I think so.
At least in vocal form, anyway.
Well, this is true, yeah. Well, yeah, even when people go drinking with us, they end up usually being pretty pleased with us. So
they want to come home with us, and not that way. People want to hang out with us.
They want to hang. Yeah, there you go. People are listening going, gag. But exactly. I had a great time with both of you. And I will extend the invitation, and I'll just pretty well tell her, look, pal, you once a year you're on the show, and just see what she says. And but she's written some wonderful stuff, and I think she's engaging in, pardon the pun, a new chapter herself on some writing. I've read some blog posts she's done recently. Eden Bailey, folks, if you don't know Eden, Google Eden Bailey and check her out. She is wonderful.
Yes, and aside from being a fabulous author, she was a fabulous guest. She is really, really engaging on the microphone.
She really is. Well, you both are. And what I loved about those appearances, too, is we all agreed on a lot of things, but there was also subtle disagreement without being disagreeable. But I thought, I always appreciate that, because I listened to that, and I've re-listened to them a couple of times. Of course, I listened to them when they happen, and then I have to produce and edit them. So I listened to them a couple or 3 times of each episode before they're out, and every time I listened, I kind of cringed a few times, because I thought, man, she is totally right about that. She wasn't trying to put me in my place, but I made some assertions that basically in her own gentle way said, no, I don't think so. And I love that.
Right. But she and both of you were very gracious, and that's one good thing about hosting, is a gracious host that can disagree but do it in a graceful way. And I think you both had that, at least in that on those 2 episodes.
I think so, and you held your own, of course, you know, and always it's just I think it's a good mix, the three of us. It's and the way I like the idea is like if the three of us met at a pub and just talked about writing and the writing life and creativity. I think that's the direction, and I think maybe that might be the way to go. When we get her back on. And that, speaking of which, you know, 2019, just as we get into looking back at 2019, and I'm still a little bit looking back at Mysterious Goings On, the show really took a different turn because I really decided to, you know, well, there's still a fair amount, as we discussed previously, of my own navel gazing, but there's but it's not just so writer centric. I wanted to make it more creativity centric. So I was really pleased looking back. And I won't do a big discussion on that now because actually the last episode I did last week was talking about all the guests, and I had excerpts from those guests who were from all these different walks of life who engage creativity in one form or another for their careers or just to succeed on a daily basis and to live their lives that way. And I want to keep that going. I really do.
And you had some great shows this year. I mean, not to say that the writerly ones aren't, but just stepping out of that comfort zone and having these different people from areas that are creative and they're passionate about that creativity, but it's not necessarily writing. I thought some of those shows were fabulous.
Thank you. I won't say like pleasantly surprised. I don't mean it like that, but I was pleasantly surprised though that people who, a lot of them were not typical guests on, you know, podcasts, you know, I was kind of not nervous, but maybe concerned that, well, maybe they'll freeze up or they won't be all that interested to talk or they won't work. But it seemed to work out really well. And I want to keep that going this year. And I think we'll get to that too, because I do want to talk to you. You and I have talked about each other's process or process, as you say, so many times. But towards the end of the conversation today, maybe we'll touch on some things creatively that we're both up to. But
absolutely.
So let me ask you something. Let's just get right into 2019 here. Is there one thing that stands out in your mind when we think of looking back in the criteria we've already discussed, looking back at, you know, things that were entertaining or culturally significant to you, or, you know, what you watched on TV, what movies, music, whatever. What's something that just leaps out at you right away and goes, wow, 2019 for me, this was pretty big?
Big, but not necessarily pretty. I mean, American news.
Yikes.
American political news was kind of the dominating thing. It kind of touched everything. I mean, if we're looking at pop culture or Hollywood or something, every awards show is kind of has this almost. I can't think of a better word, but this isn't necessarily the right word. But everything seems to have a taint of what's happening politics-wise.
Yeah.
Every actor and actress is making a speech or making a stand or making a tweet about their view of kind of the political landscape right now in the U.S. So I would say that's, and then, I mean, you flick on any of the streaming services, which were huge in 2019 just on their own, but you look at like the morning show on Apple TV Plus, which I really thought was fabulous. I mean, it wouldn't exist without the kind of the current political climate and the Me Too movement happening basically all over North America. So I think kind of, news is kind of re-injecting itself in pop culture, and it's touching more of everything, I think. Do you think that's true, or do you think I'm reaching a bit?
And I don't have that particular streaming service, so I have not seen that program.
Yep.
But I'm curious because, you know, I do appear on, that's not network, but I appear on a local, talk show here in Kansas City every month. And I like it. Wow. Because there was some chatter from some of those folks on air and off about, is it anywhere near real life or what? And of course it's not. To a degree it is, but I'm sure that it's what gets the Hollywood treatment. But I'm curious about that. But I think that you're right about the general immersion of our culture into what's going on or what's coming out of at the White House. You're always going to have the actors and actresses since the dawn of awards shows that were televised, right? But this year, you're right, it seemed even more acute, and the conversation's very coarse these days. Yeah,
it is. And I think, like you said, most good artwork and pop culture references the times that they exist in.
Right.
That makes it interesting, I think, for people. That draws a lot of people in. So yeah, it's not new. It just struck me the way you phrased the question it felt more prominent this last, and kind of ramping up, obviously, since 2016. I think just the amount of references and the amount of basis in fact, or at least alternative facts, is hitting television screens and movie theaters.
I think so too. And let me ask you, while we're talking about this, you just triggered something, because hey, that's what happens. You and I start talking. But so I put out a new novella, which you know you did a wonderful cover on, Pilate's Shadow, and there's just a few lines in there that, and I swear to God, I did not say I'm going to shoehorn these particular lines in there, but they're in there. It's and I know you know what I'm talking about when you're writing and something, it's just organic and it's flowing, and then, because my favorite part of writing is when the characters are talking. I love to write dialogue, and I work really hard on it, and but I don't try to make it. I try not to make it stilted and artificial by jamming things in there. But I had just like a throwaway conversation Pilate's having with a kind of a new character, and they're in Key Largo, a few islands up from Key West, and there's a line about this character about, well, in, I don't know what he says, 50 or 100 years, the Union of Concerned Scientists said that this place will be 99% underwater or something like that. And so that's a climate change remark and comment. But I left it in there. I thought about, well, is that too much? You know, and I thought, no, because I'm kind of tired of that particular football being treated like it's in question. It's real. It's happening. It's gonna happen. Australia's on fire for a reason. There's all these things, but so I left it in there. But I guess my question is, does that kind of thing, does that happen with you, or are you? I'm sure you're very careful because you don't want to take the reader out of the work by jamming your social agenda in there.
Exactly, and I think I have probably the exact same approach. It is not artificially inserting anything that references my personal point of view. It's really, if it's conversationally happening in a story, it has to be the kind of thing that this character would say and would believe. So that's kind of a touchstone. So when I'm editing and I go back and I see a comment like that or something, you know, agenda wise, for lack of a better word, I really test it and say, well, is this true to this character or this situation? And if it has anything to do with my point of view on it, then it probably has to get turfed. I put out in 2019, a collection of novellas, and there's a story in there, a long story, short novel called Pleasant Beach, and there's quite a pointed reference to the Mexican-American border wall, and going back over that before release and making sure that it wasn't just, you know, something that I was thinking, it was true to the character, and so it passed that test, and it's in the book. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point too where if you're trying overly hard not to put things that are current, you censor yourself, for want of a better term. Then I think you're kind of, I don't want to be too precious here, but you're kind of doing. I think you're doing your story a disservice, and you're doing, and I am fairly. I'm fair, and I will be more so, and you know, but I'm fairly vocal, particularly now. I happen to think particularly about climate, and particularly about the political things in America that are going on. I think there's a point where you have to stop going, geez, is this going to cost me sales? Because you know, because my sales have. I'll say, I think my sales have gone down a little bit. This last book is not anywhere near sold the way I'd hoped. I'm not blaming it on the fact that I've been a little louder and a little more clear about my political thoughts. That may have turned off some people. I don't know, or it just could be that the book just didn't appeal to people, or whatever, or they're not. You know, who cares? So the point is, I can't sit here and I can't sit here and wring my hands and say, well, geez, you know, I posted an article on Facebook about, something Trump did that I think is idiotic and dangerous. I just can't. I don't go out of my way to rub my reader's nose into my politics and things. But I just, and I didn't mean to go too far off the field with this, but I just appreciate where you came from because the news is so ever present. How do we as creators of worlds, how do we get around that? Unless you're just creating a world that's completely, it's in the future or it's another planet or
right. Or set specifically in a historical time period that is unchangeable.
I'll reference Michelle Stinson-Ross, who was on the show a couple episodes ago, the writer, and she writes a lot of fiction about pirates in the pirate days, but she was talking about how she's kind of putting an agenda in there a little bit, and I dare say that some of it's working really well for her. So there's that.
Yeah, there is that, and kudos on her being able to do that. That's one of the great things about historical fiction is I think you can use those kinds of stories set in a certain period or a certain place on Earth or a made up world and draw parallels without overtly mentioning a politician that's currently in power. You can kind of draw out the human condition, and you can talk about the political and social landscape in a form that is similes and metaphors for our current times. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a great opportunity for genre books to say things without actually saying them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's what especially original Star Trek was so good at, was
exactly
taking some of it was clunky as hell. I mean, you had characters were black on one side, white on the other.
Right.
Okay, but message received, but it was. But
maybe in 1960 whatever, maybe that wasn't so clunky.
Right. No, totally. And they had another one, Private Little War, and it was basically thoughts on Vietnam, which you were not to talk about on network TV in a show if you wanted to say, but they did it that way. So I think so. I think there's artful ways to do that. But anyway, I appreciate you bringing that in there. So the news is huge. So I'm going to jump to movies, and I think I know you've seen this one. I've seen it, but it seemed to be getting. There's two movies in particular that I saw that everybody seems to be talking about. There's one that everybody's talking about that just today, as we're recording this, got him about 10 Oscar nominations that I haven't seen and don't intend to see. But
okay. I'm interested now.
Okay. All right. Do you want to hear the one that I don't intend to see, or do you want to talk about the other? I guess we could.
Let's pick.
Let's just go to it. Okay. Joker got.
You have no interest in seeing Joker?
Not really. Talk me out
of
it.
No, that's not my place. I'm just so curious because actually going into it, when I follow pop culture quite a bit, especially movies and TV and stuff. So I was aware that they were making this movie with Joaquin Phoenix in it and who was the director and all this stuff. And I was like, that's never going to work. It's going to be weird, but it's never going to work. I was reluctant to see it, and then I did, and I'm glad I did. But
it works. It works for you?
It works for me. It works for about half the audience, according to ratings and reviews.
Sure.
So why are you reluctant, if I can go there?
Part of it's probably because, in general, I've mostly sworn off superhero comic related stuff, at least for a while. I felt like after Avengers Endgame and on the DC side, frankly, way back to the Dark Knight trilogy, to me it was just like, I don't think things are going to get better at this point. So then you come Joker, from everything I've seen and read about it is coming from a different direction. But maybe part of it is I've never thought Joaquin Phoenix was a credible actor. I think he's okay. I thought in Gladiator he was really bad, actually, so I don't really enjoy him much. That's one thing. Although I hear his I didn't see the whole Johnny Cash movie, but he was pretty good there when I did see.
Oh, yeah, Walk the Line is one of my favorites of the last, I don't know, how old is it now, 15 years?
God, it's been that long.
Gosh. Yeah. And I hear what you're saying about Phoenix specifically. There's certain things that he pulls off and certain things that I think is just a little bit awkward for him. I think he does really well in this. And I was surprised. And you're right. This Joker interpretation, not just his interpretation, but the actual film, the plot, the dialogue, it has no resemblance to Avengers and Iron Man type superhero movies.
Yeah, well, if I may, and from what I've read, it's
Hmm.
basically like kind of the taxi driver treatment for the Joker. He's it's like
That's, yeah, you could describe it that way.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Um,
know. I would think life is short and don't waste your time on watching a 2 hour movie that doesn't interest you.
mhm.
But I think if you had 2 hours, and I think you'd probably get something out of it. But
Okay. Well,
yeah.
if you say so, and don't worry if I don't like it, I won't blame you. But I trust your taste and your thoughts enough to look at it. It's just I read something this morning about it from a producer who just said that they thought the movie was kind of dumb for a lot of reasons, and I was found myself nodding my head, but then I said, "Oh, you hypocrite! You haven't seen the movie, so
Mm.
maybe you should stop, nodding your head." But I think I shared an excerpt to or a link to it on my writer's Facebook page just because I thought it was interesting, and I thought
Mhm.
it might generate some discussion. I haven't checked since this morning, but okay, so Joker. Well, then I will not go to the theater to see it probably, but I will when it comes on television see it. I have very little budget and or movie time, and so I want to make sure that if I go to the theater, it's for something that's a little more
Oh, for
visual.
sure.
Yeah, it's
I'm,
not it's not as
I'm definitely
extremely
with you on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see 1917 just because it looks like a sprawling epic on the
I want
screen.
to see 1917.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, but the one I did see, the two I did see, I'll just start off with you saw The Irishman, right?
I did. Yeah.
Thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I agree with some of the criticisms of the movie, and I agree that it has a very glacial pace.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the things I loved about it, is that at this stage, Scorsese's just going to go at his speed and languish in some of these scenes with these amazing actors
Right.
that are old white men,
Hmm.
at this point. Which, I mean, there's not a ton of diversity that way in the movie, but these are actors at the height of their game, with a director at the height of his game. Yeah, let me just kind of sit and stew in a scene with these guys saying these lines and believing these truths. So what a lot of viewers are saying as a criticism, which is this pace, I loved.
I didn't have a problem with the pace, and of course, I didn't see it at the movies. I saw it at home, and I was up at our house. My wife and kid usually go to bed, or usually by 9:30 or 10. They're not
Hmm.
asleep, but they're just going upstairs to get ready for bed and all that. And so I have the family room with the larger TV to myself a lot. I just well, don't let me forget. But the other last night, I watched the first two episodes of The Outsider. But anyway,
Oh.
yeah,
Hmm.
that one I can't wait to see what you think. So I didn't have a real problem with the pace, and actually, I mean, I can be straight up with you. I didn't really know much about it. I didn't. I totally missed it, and so it came up on the menu, and I was like, oh, well, that's oh gosh, De Niro, or oh geez, Al Pacino,
Hmm.
Pesci's back. Okay, I'm
Yep.
watching this thing.
Hmm.
I think I paused it once for a bathroom break, but otherwise, I thought the pacing was fine by me. The most
Hmm.
jarring thing was just when I first saw De Niro driving the truck and he's young.
Yep.
They made him young. To
Yep.
me, he still looked like he was. To me, he looked like he was like my age. He was in his 50s.
Yeah, I think they did really well with the technology, but there's certain things you can't really get around, which is posture and physical size and that kind of thing. And I think that did kind of not help with that believability.
Right. But I think
Yeah.
if you accept that they're telling a story. I mean, to
Hmm.
me, that's not a. I mean, as soon as I got over it being like jarring and
Hmm.
realizing that this was not going to be. See, this again, I did not know much about this, so I thought, oh,
Hmm.
this is going to be a quick flashback, and then there'll be no more of that, right? No,
Hmm.
practically the whole damn movie, they've all been de-aged, and
Right.
I just didn't know that was coming, so I'm just reeling from that. I think if you make the understanding, I mean, I was an old theater weenie when I was in school, and then maybe into my 30s, and doing shows. And so I think if you make that pact with the audience, where you say, "Look, we're obviously not real. We are humans. We're acting. We're on a
Hmm.
stage. You're sitting a few feet away. You bought a ticket. We're going to say our lines, and blah, blah, blah." So, but you have that suspension of disbelief, the willing suspension. So what I just said to myself was, okay, I see where they're going now. They're going to de-age these guys, and they're going to tell a story. And as soon as I made that little understanding,
Yep.
I was fine.
Hmm. And the story is really compelling, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think I will say they probably could have trimmed. I wouldn't say hour out of it like a lot of people are saying. I think they could have trimmed 15 or 20 minutes of redundant stuff.
Probably. Yeah.
But who am I? You know, I mean, it's Scorsese. If he thinks it should be in there, it should be in there. And that's the other thing too is I know a little bit about Jimmy Hoffa because I'm a big Robert F. Kennedy fan, so I know about him and Jimmy Hoffa, and I was delighted when I realized, oh my God, Pacino is playing Jimmy Hoffa. This is bananas. This is crazy, you know. Yeah. But I think he did a really nice job with it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah.
So you think what about one more though, Pesci, the most understated.
Yeah.
But very powerful performance he's done in maybe ever.
Yep. Agree. Yeah, he was fun to watch. It's fun to have him back because how many years has he been quote unquote retired?
Quite a few.
I don't know, 8 or 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was really well done all the way around. I can understand with the de-aging, the price tag of that movie. It was, I don't know, reportedly, was it $80 million or something?
Holy cow.
Yeah. For primarily, recent historical motion picture, but with all that de-aging technology, I mean, that must have just blew their budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see Ray Romano in there. Ray has done a lot of, serious roles over the past 10 or 15 years since his sitcom ended, and some better than others, but he's developing some chops. And what I liked about him in this is he was just playing it very reserved down the middle, the way this character was supposed to be. And so I think a lot of people don't really think about this, but sometimes restraint, and that Pesci's case too, sometimes restraint is even tougher for an actor. And Pacino really, he wasn't in full hoo-ah mode the whole time.
Right, right. He was quite reserved as well, yes.
Yeah, so that was good. Okay, so we both agreed. We both had we'll do our Siskel and Ebert. We both had a thumbs up on The Irishman, right?
I think so.
All right, did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I was just going to ask you if you'd seen it. I've seen it and really liked it.
I liked it more than I thought I would, and I generally like Quarantino. I'll just call him Quarantino. I generally like Q's work. I don't love all of it, but I generally like and respect it. And I see what he's trying to do usually, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm dude, if you read my books, they're all full of pop culture references and in jokes that probably one reader out of 100 gets. So when I see what he's doing on stuff, I'm always just tickled by that. And this one, the thing that the biggest emotion for me though, honestly, besides nostalgia, was dread.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize until the final act how much dread I had built up.
Yeah.
And without spoiling it for any listeners, just that final act and how it went, how can I say it without spoiling it? How it went in an unexpected way.
Yeah.
And people who've seen the movie should understand what I mean by that. That kind of released this tension, and I realized how much tension and dread I actually had. Oh. And then that's almost when I realized how successful the first acts of the movie were for me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. I was very surprised with that final act, I will say.
I was too.
Not like a big sudden, one scene twist, but just that whole final act. Ooh, I couldn't believe he went that. Quentin went that direction.
I couldn't either. And talk about restraint, right? It's interesting too. I don't believe DiCaprio got an Oscar nomination, but Brad Pitt did, which is fine by me because I am not a fan of Leonardo DiCaprio's. I say this all the time. I always see him acting, and he makes it hard for me to accept the disbelief, to suspend my disbelief, because I just always see him. I see him making his choices as an actor on the screen, and as much as he did a great job with this playing, and I know a lot about 50s and 60s westerns on TV, and so this was a treat for me. My everybody knows listening that my grandfather wrote westerns. They weren't movies, but I have a love for them, and I could tell you so much about movies or westerns like Laredo and Wagon Train and Have Gun Will Travel, and to see this wonderful pastiche, and then to have him work in like Timothy Oliphant playing James Stacy.
Right.
This is a great little scene. Now people don't know who he was, but at the time, till about from the 60s to the mid 70s, he was kind of a big deal on TV westerns and stuff. Oliphant's character playing Stacy, drives away on a motorbike. Well, I knew this immediately. I went, well, I know that James Stacy lost his arm and a leg in a motorcycle accident, and Oliphant is riding out on the very same make and model of motorbike. And I watched that, and I was just like, oh, Q, that is so well done.
Yeah, that's a deep cut right there, because I had no idea.
Total deep cut, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure I missed some really other deep cuts, but I caught that one and a few others, and I love the way they mix things in. Pitt, just, I've always respected Pitt. Some people don't. I've always thought he was a very good actor. I think there's a lot going on on his face, or in his eyes, but not on his face. And that may sound like a backhanded compliment, but it's not. And I thought the way he starts off this movie very much like Rusty from, well, in my opinion, kind of like laid back, like Rusty from the Ocean's 11 series he did with Clooney. What you don't catch until you go on a little bit more is he's just this seething. He's just underneath it all. He is just this roiling, seething nightmare.
Yeah, and see, what I'll say about Brad Pitt is I really like this performance in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But I kind of maybe used to look at Pitt maybe the way that you look at Leo.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot more respect for Pitt. I think this latter half, or this latter 15 years of his career, I think he's just gotten to be a much better actor. I think in the early days he was kind of just not nearly as natural as he's become. Pitt is getting better with age, I would say.
Was he getting by as a youth? Sorry to interrupt. As a younger man, do you think he was kind of getting by on his Robert Redford-ish looks and charm, but not?
I think in the early days, yeah. The Thelma and Louise kind of. First 5 years, I think, definitely. But I think he's developed into just a fabulous actor, so I think he deserves his nomination.
I think A River Runs Through It started to change my mind about him.
That's just a fabulous movie on all fronts.
Of course, Norman MacLean wrote such a wonderful book. But on so many... It reminds me, Craig Sheffer kind of disappeared, didn't he? But anyway, the actor who played his brother, he kind of played Norman. He kind of disappeared. He always played a-holes, and then he got in that part, and he was a sweet, good person. And I don't know what happened to his career, but anyway,
me neither.
Shout out to Craig. Well, okay, we both are thumbs up on this, and we don't want to spoil anything for listeners, but we both recommend. I'll just say it for Jason. He'll correct me if I'm wrong, but see them both. They're worth your time.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. There's a reason both of those movies are nominated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I have and I've got some viewing to do with Joker down the road too. So I'll probably wait until it's on TV, but I will definitely catch it. So those are some movies. Are there any other movies that stood out for you this year?
Just in looking at this list here of the Oscar nominations, which at the time of this recording came out recently, I've seen and liked Ford v Ferrari. I've seen and liked Jojo Rabbit. I've seen and liked Parasite, Marriage Story. I really enjoyed Knives Out. Which
Knives
is
Out, yes.
The first kind of murder mystery that's been, I think, successful at the murder mystery genre, probably in, 20, 25 years.
Amen.
Yeah. Have you seen any of those that I mentioned?
I saw Knives Out. I can't believe I forgot to mention it. Thank you for reminding me. Totally loved Knives Out. I agree with you 100%. I think it was done incredibly well. And I am excited that it did so well that they're looking at doing a sequel with Benoit.
Yeah. I wonder if Knives Out is an example, just in my own storytelling, and maybe you would agree with this. I find the faster that I do something, the faster I write a book, the faster I write a story. That first draft, if I get through that at a relatively quick clip, I find that it usually works better as a story. And just in reading about Rian Johnson and his process in writing that script, and how he had to kind of get Daniel Craig into the role and prepped and ready to shoot. I think they had 2 weeks so that they could shoot the entire movie Knives Out before Craig had to go back to London and do the Bond movie.
Wow. And
Daniel Craig kind of brought on board a lot of the cast because of his clout. And they just made that movie really fast. And it really works. In hearing this and reading about that and seeing the actual movie and how it turned out, I think back on some of the things that I've done. If I'm writing a book and it kind of comes together in about 3 months or less, it usually reads better and needs less help towards the finish line than something that takes 5-6 months.
Totally agree with you.
Do you find that for your own stuff, or do you find that even in movies and things that you consume?
I totally agree. I can tell you, my first book, well, my second book really is 3 months really to get it all the bones, get the meat on the bones, and then there's some work after that to kind of polish it up. But
Hmm.
but then my third and fourth books were kind of slogs, and they took longer, and I really started to hate them, and then I just turned around with my book of short stories that you've kindly said nice things about, and those just came out of me, and I didn't, and I just, but we've talked about this before, and I won't waste time going over it again, other than to say, just to help you make your point. Yeah, those were like, I was just like, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to move through it fast because I just want to get these things out and entertain myself a little bit, and boom, you and several other readers have really liked that, and so it's a great lesson. And the Ryan Johnson, the creator, the director, and writer of Knives Out, is a great guy to hold up for that. I don't love what he did with Star Wars, but that's another discussion. But I think he's definitely inspiring me to do that kind of work going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty cool. I mean, he probably was handed a fairly sizable check for his Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
He could have done almost anything
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
Um,
And he did
but
this.
But he chose to go and make a murder mystery in 2019 when nobody was doing that.
And it's just a little. It's a little film, really.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean. And I don't mean that unkindly. But it's a small film. I was enchanted though by the lead actress. I'm blanking on her name, who was in it, but she was also in the Blade Runner 2049.
Yes.
And
Anna de Armas?
something like that. And I was in love with her in both of these movies. So I just think she is electric. And
Yeah. And I think she's going to be in the next Bond as well.
is she really?
I believe so.
Oh, sweet. And I will have to do a whole episode about Bond, but Daniel Craig is actually my favorite Bond. A lot of people are like, yeah, but I love him, and so I'm excited. I'm looking at this movie like bonus because I thought he was quitting after the last one. I think it's gonna be the same way I feel about Batman when he leaves, because right now, who is it? The Pattinson is now the new Batman.
Yes. Yes.
And I wasn't crazy about. I didn't hate Ben Affleck as Batman, but by then the balloon was off the rose for me, and I just wasn't interested in watching anymore after the Dark Knight series. And so I've only caught bits and pieces of that performance, and I kind of feel that way about. I'm kind of thinking I'll feel that way about Bond when it gets down to it. It's okay though, because most people's favorite Bond doesn't even necessarily have to be the recognized best Bond. It's just the Bond that's either that time of your life speaks to you the most or whatever. Like some people who love Roger Moore, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think he was the best Bond, but that's okay. And I grew up on Sean Connery and Roger Moore. So, but I just always, out of those two, preferred Sean Connery. But I enjoyed aspects of Roger Moore's performance. So anyway, I feel like that's kind of the direction I'm going with Bond, the new Bond, whoever that will be after this movie.
I think they probably need to give it a break. I don't think they will. I think they'll probably, keep chugging along and make another one with a new actor, which is fine. But I think they should probably give it a few years, like I think they should do with most of these franchises. I think there's a glut of Star Trek movies. I think there's a glut of, certainly right now, of Star Wars movies. I think I think I got really fatigued on the Marvel universe. The Avengers, I think we mentioned a little earlier. I think they need to give us all a breather on some of these things and try some new content. I mean, there are so many great storytellers out there. They don't have to keep going back to the same comic books or the same movies that were made since the 50s and 60s. That said, I like the James Bond movies. But I don't know. Give us a breather. Try something else, I think. What do you think?
I think so.
How many more incarnations of Batman do we need?
I don't need any more. I mean, frankly, all I really need, I've got Christian Bale, I've got Michael Keaton, and I've got Adam West. Those are the ones that mean something to me. So I'm with you. And Star Wars, I don't know what possessed them to just flood the market. Well, it's greed, but they've just flooded the market with so much content. And to me, the one thing that the Marvel universe has done extremely well, you got Kevin Feige, who's overseen remarkably well. I mean, if you watch, like the other day, I had never seen Ant-Man with Paul Rudd from Kansas City, and I just came across it, and I've kind of, like I said, I've mostly sworn this stuff off, so I've never saw it. But there was Michael Douglas, who had been de-aged in that a little bit, by the way, in the beginning. And I'm just watching, and Paul Rudd's a very winning actor. He's enjoyable to watch, and the way it's tongue and groove with the universe. It all fits. Everything
Right.
comes together. It's really skilled work. But I don't see that with the Star Wars stuff. I think it's, and we could spend all day on it. And I know you love Star Wars more than I do, but bear me out for just a moment. Remember, I mean, 1977, I was there at the drive-in watching the Star Destroyer come across the screen. I mean, I was in awe. I loved Darth Vader. He was my dude and all this stuff. But what I keep seeing is like there's just this very awkward retelling of the same 2 or 3 stories, and I'm just thinking, man, I have to think that these really creative, wonderful people who got, like Ryan Johnson, who got to helm these things, had so many other people's fingers in the pie, so many probably people they had to please at the studio, and the people who have the IP and all this stuff. I just have to wonder if it's just nobody can tell at this point a really great Star Wars story that's original, because there's too many people who get nervous on the studio side saying, no, let's just, we need another Death Star. Let's bring back Palpatine. Let's just do all this stuff that made us all this money before. We don't need to risk anything. And then there's the competing people who are like, no, we need to make it all about female centered. We got to make all these things. And, we need to add diversity to it. And then you got this other competing group that's like, we need to do something different here, folks. And there's all these different constituencies. And that's why you get, I think, the people like the Fandom Menace, which is fairly, very loud, and some would say very negative, people who hate everything that's being made. And I can't go that far, because I watched Rogue One and was enchanted by that film.
It was a fabulous movie. Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. I will say that as soon as Lucasfilm was bought by Disney, I said to myself, we're going to get lots of new Star Wars movies. They're going to be a mess, because there's no one single Feige type or Lucas type figure who has all of that in their head and keeps track of it all and meshes the stories together. So they will be disjointed, and they will be, to a degree, made by committee.
Yeah.
Because they got to recoup, what was it, $4.05 billion purchase price of that company?
Right.
They got to recoup that, and they got to recoup that probably within 4 to 5 years. And these movies take 2.5 or 3 years to make. So they're going to be punting these out the door. I accepted that. So when I went to see The Force Awakens, I just knew there's going to be stuff in here that I don't dig. There's going to be stuff here that is inserted by a figurehead at a company instead of just a storyteller's vision.
Right.
So once I accepted that, I had great fun with all 3 of the trilogy movies. Some parts I like more than others. There's parts I dislike, but I think they were lots of fun. I even liked the Han Solo movie. I don't think it needed. I don't think it needed to exist, and it shouldn't have.
Right.
But if you just ignore the fact that it's, going back to tell us things about an established character that we don't need to know, if you just get past that, it's a really fun movie.
It's a totally fun movie. But you and I, we've talked offline about this. We don't have to rehash it here, but we both agreed. I mean, one thing I love about Han Solo is the mystery of this rogue and how he started. And this movie just connects to all the dots and like, well, here's how he started. And it's just like, I wish they'd put the same thought and budget into making just a Lando Calrissian movie, because we don't know much about Lando. That could have been, I think, very successful and interesting, and Donald Glover did a great job.
Yeah, he did.
But I'm with you. If you take your, I don't know, if you kind of take yourself out of it that way and just say, okay, is this an entertaining movie? Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you on that. And I just switch gears real quick, because I know you're not as big on Trek, but Star Trek is going through this similar convulsions.
Yes.
I don't think Discovery's very good. Okay, and I'm not alone.
I've told you this. I tried to watch season 1 of Discovery. I got through a couple of episodes and I quit. And then we talked about it again, and I tried again and I quit. It just there's just nothing there for me.
Well, and there's nothing there for me either. And this is why I understand the Fandom Menace types who really get worked up. I wish they would get more worked up about real life things. Hello, but whatever. To each his own. I used to get way more worked up about Star Trek, because I happen to think J.J. Abrams was just making a demo reel to get the Star Wars directing gig. I don't think he really understood Star Trek. He made it into an action flick, blah, blah, blah. And I think we're still seeing that similar thing with Discovery, but we're also seeing very much an agenda, and I'm fine, whatever. The pendulum swings back and forth. In my opinion, the most interesting character was ancillary. It was Captain Pike. Bringing him back was, to me, he was the most interesting actor and the most interesting character they had going. I just find, except for Saru, I find most crew to be a real snore, just not interesting, and shoehorning yet another unknown family member into Spock's lineage. He had this foster sister or this stepsister we didn't know about. It's like, we've already been down this road. We Star Trek V, motion picture Star Trek V, we have long lost brother, it's just it's so cornball and stupid. And so I have a lot of issues with that. I'm going somewhere with this, folks. The reason I wanted to mention that, though, was now we have Picard coming up, like next week.
Yes.
As of this recording. Are you going to watch that? Hey, Jason, we, as usual, have more things to talk about than time to talk about them. So how about this? Have you come back next week and we'll finish this discussion up. 2019 was a long year. I mean, it was at least 365 days. So will you come back next week?
Absolutely. I'd be delighted.
That sounds great. All right, my brother. I will talk to you then. Look, folks, if you want to find out more about Jason's work, where do you go? Jason, where would somebody go?
Well, the mothership home base on the web is thefarthestreaches.com. And other than that, I'm on social media, all the usual haunts, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Twitters. And find me in those places. If you want to buy a book or check out a reading sample, go to any of the major bookstores on the web, Amazon, Apple, wherever books are sold, and type in my name. That's Jason McIntyre, McIntyre.
Sounds good. And of course, you can find links in the show notes and those kind of places, but you can find my stuff at mgopod.com, pilotscross.com, or on Amazon. We're pretty much exclusive to Amazon these days for the John Pilot Mysteries, but don't forget I've also got a Western with Robert E. Trevathan out there called Big Cabin, and Dispatches from the West as